Okay, so I'm going to turn the time over to Carrie, and she's going to talk about some of the potential structures and some of the challenges and issues, and I'll just turn it over to you.
Okay, so Emily's going to pass out a handout that basically provides us a framework for some possible structures for the SPP network. And so what I'm going to do as these are coming around, I think this is actually one of the most important things that might come from this workshop, especially from my perspective, since right now I am overseeing the network and it's being managed by my staff, okay? So I just want to give you some of the questions that we hope to answer today. So the first is, what do you all need from the network? And that's what Eric's tried to put together for us up here. And so if there are other things, this is a distillation, so there probably are other things that you would need from the network, and we recognize that, and it's been captured, hopefully. If you feel like it hasn't been captured, then maybe you can let Eric know, and he'll capture it for us. We want to know what you, given all of your infinite tools and skills, can provide to the network, because this is something we're building together. We hope that you will be willing to contribute some things to the network. What those things are, yet to be determined. And we want to know what type of an organizational structure would best meet the long-term goals that we're putting forward. A lot of these goals that are on the walls, lots and lots of really great ideas, right? And so we've kind of put together some ideas for us to kind of bounce off of. And I'm just going to explain kind of the status quo for you so you have a sense. You might not really understand how we're structured now. So right now, we're structured out of the Evergreen office. So we're using Evergreen State College resources. We're trying not to use a lot of Department of Corrections resources, because any money we get from the Washington State Department of Corrections needs to be spent in Washington State to benefit the public of Washington State. And so really using those funds to support a national network are not very appropriate. What I'd like to tell you right off is the model that we have right now, albeit a lot of it is working, is not a sustainable model, because it is completely funded by this National Science Foundation and then contributions from our other grants and contracts and staff that are paid in other ways. And the NSF grant ends August 30th of this year. So this puts us in a pretty uncomfortable position of wanting to move this network forward, but knowing that we're going to face some severe limitations in terms of staff support, funding support, abilities to come together, even to really support things like the networking site. And so I don't want to sound pessimistic. Of course, we are all optimistic, but I want you to understand the realities of this network and this collective endeavor that we're hoping we all undertake as a group in some way. So how it's organized right now, and to just give you some updates on the staff changes for the next few months. So most of you have met Kelly Bush. She is on maternity leave. Her baby is imminent any minute. Jocelyn is stepping in to her position, and so Jocelyn is the new acting program manager for Washington's SPP Washington. And because Jocelyn was formerly the network coordinator on the NSF grant, we've brought Andrea Martin in as one of our graduate students who will take on the network coordinator role. So as members of the network, if you have issues, with the website and have issues connecting with new partners or just have questions, please direct your questions to Andrea. And if she can't answer them, she'll find other people that can. So right now, we are running the network website. We're writing protocols. We're providing advice pretty much freely to anyone who wants it. It does take a significant amount of our time. The funding right now is, or in the future, I see it as variable. And like I said before, right now it's coming from the National Science Foundation and some of our other grants. The network coordination is housed currently at the Evergreen State College, supported by our Washington DOC team to some degree, but again, that DOC support is mostly supporting in-state actions. And so right now we're just working with some of you. We've had requests for our logo, which we love, and we're really excited to share it. But we start realizing, maybe there needs to be some kind of agreement process. What do you have to agree to use our logo, right? And so we're working out some of those details. We're really, really excited about the opportunities of sharing the logo and using the logo and expanding the brand and becoming a national network. But we're also, conscious of the need to protect Evergreen in particular, as my institution, and the SPP programs that we've put so much energy into. So right now we have part-time staff and part-time students that are supporting the network. But like I said, we'll lose the funding for those positions in August. Now, we've come up with a couple ideas for other models, and I don't even know all the pros and cons of them, but what we'd like to have is just a brief discussion with you, and we can maybe choose from among these models. I honestly think that none of the models, even the current model, are probably the ideal model, and that there is an ideal model out there that's made up of a kind of a combination of some of these issues. So that you understand, a freeware model probably sounds really great to a lot of you, that we would provide all of our SPP resources and expertise for free, and you would have full usage rights. Maybe there couldn't be a fee, so that's probably a mistake. If it were freeware, there'd be no fee. New SPP sites would use these resources as needed. You'd all be independent of one another. You'd kind of probably be more or less independent of a network and of us in Washington. And that would make things really simple in some ways. But the freeware model, from my perspective, doesn't work because I would have to raise all the funds to provide those resources to everyone, and I don't see that as a tenable plan. And so, what's terrific about this grant is that we've been able to pay for most of you to come to this and have this conference. We'd love to keep having conferences, but there won't be another grant, not that there won't be, but this grant won't continue. And so hopefully there will be other grants, and hopefully we'll be writing grants together. Okay, a coalition or federation model. Most of you probably aren't familiar with the Long-Term Ecological Research Network, but it's kind of a network across the country of sites where they're studying ecosystems locally, but they use common protocols across the network so that they can address big research questions together. So it's kind of a nice model, a potential model. But they kind of agree to a pact. They have to apply to be an LTER site. There's limited funding. It's actually a National Science Foundation program, so we wouldn't have that kind of money necessarily that would then go to you to help develop your site. But it would allow us as a network to pool our resources, combine our efforts, but your primary commitment might remain to your own site, and you might attend a meeting annually or biannually. There would probably be a review board that needs to be put in place to manage differences among sites and try to kind of make sure everyone's working in the same direction. And so there probably would be some dedicated network staff that would be necessary. A franchise model would be something like Jamba Juice, right? So you decide you want to start a Jamba Juice, and you ask for their logos and their recipes, and you basically you move along in a very kind of prescripted way, following the rules and doing whatever it means to be a Jamba Juice or an SPP in this way. There is a fee most likely involved, and the fee is basically used as a royalty payment for the trademark and then reimbursement for training and advisory services. So any individual site might apply to be part of the franchise and then need to meet some established standards and probably pay an annual fee to keep being part of the franchise. Again, there would be some dedicated network staff, and that would require a lot more compliance and meetings and kind of reporting to make sure that you're meeting these standard goals. And then there's a nonprofit model, which a lot of nonprofits, like someone like the Nature Conservancy, maybe as an example, I think any of these could be fee-based. So there might be membership fees that come from the site or membership fees that come from an individual. Most of us, I think, are members of societies or agencies or associations where we might go to a conference and we have to pay some kind of annual fee. So we can talk about whether fees are something we'd be willing to pay or not, and whether they need to come from an individual or an institution. There's still certain standards that need to be met. There's a common vision. So it's similar to the franchise model, but not quite as strict. There's still dedicated network staff. For a nonprofit, you'd require an executive director of the nonprofit, and you'd require a board of directors that would really guide what the executive director is allowed to do. And some of the problems with a nonprofit organization, from my perspective, are I can see kind of all of these models moving forward, say, out of the Washington Evergreen office, except the nonprofit model. Once we move into a nonprofit status, I can no longer use the resources that Evergreen provides me. And right now, Evergreen pays payroll. Evergreen provides office supplies, office furniture, offices, space, PR help, grant support, all kinds of things that are really indirectly supporting all of you to be here. And so that would need to be weighed into this discussion. So, I think this is one of the hardest things that we have to discuss today, and it's also kind of highlighting some of the limitations. Everything else that we've done in the past 2.5 days has been glorious and visionary and big ideas and so exciting, and I hate to kind of end, well, we won't end on this note, but to kind of drag you into the muck of, like, where do we go now? And so I guess we want to elicit feedback from you guys so you can help us move forward as we make decisions about how we continue. If some of your feedback is, hey, I want to start a nonprofit and do this, let me know, because that's a possibility too. I think that, all of us would have to weigh in and talk about that. But what kind of feedback do you guys have, and where are the microphones, and are they running around? There we go. Paul.
Thank you for taking on this conversation. It's a really huge topic, and I'm very enthusiastic about what you're doing. I think that there's one more model I'd like to add, which is the service club model. Okay. And that the examples of that would be Rotary, Kiwanis, Lions Club, all those, which are volunteer networks. Okay. And so most of them do not have paid staff, but they do have local organizations, which are membership groups, which charge membership dues, and those portion of those dues goes to the national organization or the international organization. And I think that might work for SPP. And I also like the idea of optional contributions to the national network, so that it's sort of a hybrid model of the status quo, freeware, and support from those who can get it. So it's sort of a sliding scale from $0 to $1,000 a year, depending on what your agency or your organization can afford, which does provide some cash flow. And I'm particularly sensitive to the benefit of the relationship with Evergreen, which I think should be protected at all costs. So those are my thoughts, and I'm in on whatever you do.
Well, thank you. Tommy.
Just a thought, and I don't know whether it's viable under your arrangements with the university, but my university used to, and I know a number of them still do, host tenant organizations and take a piece of the indirect out of wherever the funding comes from. But it's sort of, for an organization, whether it's, typically they were nonprofits, they were professional organizations, but when they applied for grants, they did it with X number of dollars involved and dedicated to overhead to offset salaries, indirect, et cetera. And I don't know whether the trade for Evergreen is that, obviously they get a bigger national footprint as you grow your organization. Right. I don't know if that's something, some universities aren't interested in that and some are, so.
I can speak that Evergreen is definitely not. I had conversations with the provost recently, but, University of Utah, University of Maryland, there are other universities, that might be more interested in hosting a public service center or a nonprofit in that capacity. So that's something to explore for sure. Other feedback? If there are certain things on this list that you think are key that we have to have as part of the network, that'll help us as we build a model. There's Steve over there.
All right, is this on? Yeah, okay. So, for us, it's selling it to our command. That's what it comes down to, and bringing this message back and then talking to our command staff about it. I think part of it also, when you're trying to raise funds, membership fees, those types of things, if you can qualify it with those standards and that certification process kind of thing, then you're able to you're charging that fee for that opportunity to meet that standard, or application fee, that kind of thing, in order to obtain that certification. But that certification then is something that you can share and that you can promote. And so I think that having something like that gives us something to take to our command staff to say, yeah, let's apply for this, similar to achievement award or whatever the case may be, and have some kind of a scale there that you can apply for different levels or whatever, and it might just give you an introduction into it and allow us to take something back to say, yeah, what you're going to get is you're going to get the certification, which will help you, whether you're funding, whether you're with your board of commissioners, whether you're public relations, whatever it may be, and that type of thing. So that's kind of my comment on it.
I think that's a great point. It's not really on the list, but what you've all been through is an SPP training, and we've given you a handbook, and we've given you our blessing to go out and be all you can be in terms of SPP, right? So what would you or your institution have paid for training like this? Say we go home and we make up a certificate and we say, you are all now trained SPP blanks instructors, or whatever we want to call ourselves. And you all got to go through this for free because we had this grant. But the next round of people would have to come to Washington maybe, or Utah, or wherever, go on some prison tours and receive some training, get the handbook, all of that stuff. How much could we charge for that? How many of you have been through other training programs like this, and what did they charge? I have no idea. So Chris and
I don't
then
think
Debbie?
I don't think it starts with what we're willing to pay. I think it starts with what it costs you.
Well,
when it comes to
Yeah.
everything, especially in what I see as sort of a grassroots type of approach. If you're going to head, I'm assuming no one's going to try and make money off of this.
But what if the excess money went to start seed grants
I would
for
just-
you?
Well, I think you have to be careful because first we're perilously close to involving attorneys. Because there are going to be MOUs and things, and that might be fine and needed. But I think if you want to talk about costs, I think it would be best to start with, I can't imagine going to my provost and saying, what can you afford? They're going to say nothing. But if you could tell us, okay, so what did it cost? What was the grant for? How much did this cost? It cost $500,000 for X number of people. Then you could start there.
I can just answer that quickly in terms of a training you were mentioning. One of the things you might have been aware of, that after the first conference that happened in Washington and all the press that came out of that, the Washington office got tons of requests. Could we come take a look at your prisons? Could we get involved with this? And the answer was no. The next conference has been slated to be in Utah, so we can't do that. So we actually wrote a grant supplement to the current NSF grant. It's still pending right now, but that was, I believe, for $50,000. And that would cover 25 people.
Yeah, I
or
can't remember, but
yeah,
we
but
have
it's
done
more,
some
between 20 and
numbers.
25 people could be covered with airfare, all the stuff that we've gotten here. So if you use that as, 50,000 divided by 25 people, that would be basically what a ballpark figure of what a training would be for this. And I guess what we would like to know is, given your situations at this time, would that be possible to squeeze out from your personal bank account, from your boss's bank, from your commander's bank account, from my provost's bank account? In my department, we have travel funds to professional meetings, and we get some X amount of $100 a year or $500 a year, and that, because it builds us up professionally and academically. Some institutions have that, some obviously do not. But we need to know a little bit about, would the traffic bear this in terms of planning our next conference if we don't get NSF funding?
Well, and I think there's a difference too between a conference and a training event, right? A conference, I think we could hold a conference for relatively cheaply, and we could run everything for, a normal conference registration fee of $250. You pay your own way, that kind of thing. But that's paying for the space. It's not paying for all of the effort and the programming that went into the creation of the program and the future of the program. And so I see, a program like Inside Out. How many of you are familiar with Inside Out? A few of you, they charge a pretty hefty fee to become a certified Inside Out instructor. $1,600, right? So that's a ballpark. Maybe it's something around $1,600. I don't know.
The math that Nalini gave was 2,000.
Yeah.
And Inside Out is having a little bit of a fiscal crisis. It's not
So maybe they
a low number, yeah.
maybe they need to charge more. John.
I was just going to say that you guys can leverage your position as an Institute of Higher Learning and have some kind of certificate program. I think that if there's something that of value that people can take out and be like, oh, hey, I could put this on my resume. You know, we could say we have a certain number of people in our institution that have this certification. And then I think University of Oregon has this sustainability professional certification. You have to take 10 classes, and it's like more than $250 a class. So you multiply that out. That's probably around the ballpark of $3,000 to get that certification. And I've been able to get my bosses to even with our extremely constrained budget to pay for some of those classes.
So I'm not asking for like, what do we decide on the money? I'm just wondering, like, what's the ballpark? Are we talking, can you pay $50 a year for an individual membership versus would someone new be able to pay $2,000 maybe? Or Jill?
I want to say a couple things. First of all, I think it depends on what the objectives are of the meeting or the training or the conference. So, for instance, when Chris and I first came to Washington to tour, my department picked up those costs. The Department of Corrections did not. And then the second time, we were paid for, which was great, and we brought along Captain Sepulveda. And then the third time, his department was willing to pick up his fee to come so that he could come as the third. So I think that, when you're trying to recruit people and get them interested and that having free attendance is really important. I also think as a government agency that we're restricted a lot on our traveling for budget reasons, and I'm not allowed to travel out of state unless I somehow get it paid for some other way. So there are restrictions on things like that sometimes. But I do think that we belong to a number of different organizations and agencies and support them. And it really comes down to us making the case. In my case, we belong to some other sustainability organizations. It's a matter of making a case for, why are we doing this? Are we doing it just to support an organization and make it, help get it going, or are we doing it because there's a benefit to us and being able to make that case? So $500, $1,000, $2,000, I think all of those would be within my budget, probably maybe not the DOC's, but in terms of ours, as a membership fee would be a reasonable amount. And the other thing I just wanted to say, since I have the microphone, which was your earlier question, was what part of this is really important. And I think the thing that's really important in all these models is that you're saying staff. So somehow we need to fund some people, whether it's only, if we're funding staff that's just grant writers to raise money to support the organization, that would be okay. But really funding somebody, 1, 2, 5 people that are there on a regular basis to kind of keep making sure that the network works. Because if you drop that, it's going to go away. So however you do that. But I mean, seriously, you could do it, by funding people to really continue to go out and seek funding. I mean, that could be one of the key things that your staff has to do is to basically, keep getting funding.
Well, what I was going to suggest is if we take a look at some other national models, certified safety professionals, certified industrial hygienist, certified correctional manager, certified, if we can tie, right, if you can tie some kind of a certification so people can put something at the end of their name, that can generate money. And if we can tie that in, my background was industrial hygiene and safety profession years ago, a while back. And before that was emergency management. And in order to become a certified emergency manager, you had to meet a certain level of criterias, and then you had to take a test, and the fee for that test was $250. And then you had to put in your application, and the application fee was another $125. And the same type of thing works for certified safety professionals, certified industrial hygienists, certified correctional managers. For those of you who are aware of the ACA program, that's. So if we could, certified sustainability manager, or certified sustainability coordinator, something like that, tie that in, and that's easier to sell to our managers than it is to say, we want to join a network.
Okay, well, maybe
Yeah,
we
I
can
wanna-
form a committee around those ideas.
Yeah, I want to
moving
just dovetail on
certification
that
forward.
also. There's been a lot of talk about LEED certification for prison construction. We made up LEED. I mean, we made it up. We literally wrote out on the back of an envelope an idea about, well, what if we did points, and what if we did this, and what if we did that? It was, 25, 30 years ago, but U.S. Green Building Council didn't exist. It was a bunch of us advocates who said we need some kind of certification thing. So think big,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah, I
you
think we
will
can make
require
it.
some sponsorship for a while, but you can get it to a point where it's accepted.
Do you have a professional school at Evergreen?
No.
So one way to do this would be to work with a university's professional school, because then what that does is, so we negotiated basically funding a new graduate program with a professional degree, where we knew that the tuition was being paid for by government agencies. And so that extra tuition then was poured into supporting things like graduate assistantships. It seems to me that one way to do this would be that certification could come from an accredited institution via tuition fees and test fees and so on. And at the same time, the institution raises some money, and then the program raises some money to support the network efforts. In that case, and in that way, the state can feel justified in supporting tuition costs. And you talk about money coming from a fundamentally different pool in the budget. That might be one way to think about it.
Right, and a way to train new, young people
Oh, yeah,
to do this,
absolutely.
and then go off and do amazing
Yeah, and
things.
I understand what you're saying about the individual thing. I think that might be down the road a little bit, though, too, because that'd take a while to try and formulate and put together, and I don't know that you're on that time frame. I think you got to look more at the bigger picture of the institution level, of the building level, of the efforts that are currently going on, and certification type things like that, where they meet standards or whatever, and they help pay for the not only the certification, whatever that, and what you give them, that they can then use. So I think that might be a faster way to make an inroad. Yeah, you can have individual programs down the road and stuff, but I don't know that you're going to meet that timeline on what you're looking for. And I think at least if you could say that, people are out there, they're working, they're doing these things, and they want to promote them within their institutions or promote them within their counties, that having those that type of certification available, or that type of, and I don't know what the right word I'm looking for is, to be able to take back and give as a promotional tool for those institutions would be a good start. And then there's a fee to do that, whether we've apply for, an achievement award in sustainability, which we've done at the national level before with the counties, and that was a self-qualifying thing. And there wasn't, it was just it was a self-qualifying thing. You got the packet, you looked at your standards, you matched those up, and then you sent those in to get that, and you paid the fee for that. So things like that may provide a faster road to some type of funding.
Great.
One more membership comment, which is that that it's really important if you're looking at a membership fee, which can be a very nice, stable kind of organizational funding, is to look at whether you want individual memberships or whether you want organizational memberships. And organizations struggle with that question, but it's a really important one.
Okay. Well, thank you for your feedback. I wish we had a lot more time to give to this, but I'm being told that we're finished. If you have other feedback, maybe what we can do is we can start a discussion about the structure, about fees in particular, certification programs, and we can, yeah, we can really start deciding. I mean, we, like Paul said, we get to decide. We are SPP, and we can make a certification program, and that's it. Thank you.